All right, welcome to Christian Overcomers, and thank you for joining us for this Bible study. Revelation 13Q, using Pebbles to calculate 666. When reading this verse, most people don't look past the number 666. They believe that that's all we need to know. But you know what? Understanding that the number of the beast is 666 does not take any wisdom on our part. I mean, it's plainly given to us right here in this verse. In fact, even a 5-year-old just beginning to read can pick up the Bible and understand this. So why did God open up this verse with the phrase, "Here is wisdom"? What did he mean by it? Well, the thing is, there are two sides to this equation. 666, like I said, is plainly given to us. But the other side is not. And this is actually an equation, an example that a listener of ours posted on Facebook, so I thought I would just use this one because I thought it was really good. And he pointed out that counting the number of the beast is like having to solve for X. And that is so true. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out what all these other factors are of the number 666, because the wisdom, the wisdom is not found in the number 666 itself. I mean, what I mean by that, it's not found by just knowing that that's the number of the beast. The wisdom that God was referring to is found in the process of factoring. I'm going to say that again. The wisdom is found in the process of factoring. Let me explain. We'll go back and take another look at this verse where God says here, "Here's wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast." So, first of all, what kind of understanding is God talking about here? Is it simply a biblical understanding, which obviously is really, really important? Or is it just someone with spiritual eyes to see and ears to hear? Again, those play a part in it, but you know what? That's not what it's talking about. Because the understanding that God is referring to was somebody who had understanding in counting. Someone who has understanding, or someone who understands how to make calculations. In other words, someone skilled in mathematics. And not necessarily the kind of math you learn in high school or college. We're talking about a kind of math that the Bible and everything in creation operates by. And which is oftentimes these days only really known by, or even in the past, only really known by various initiates of the mystery schools. Because, they stole this knowledge and they hid it from the mainstream. They hid it from the public. And they guarded these secrets for themselves while allowing us to just learn the simple math that, can be quite boring at times. Just enough math. We learn just enough math to figure out how to calculate our taxes at the end of the year. That's about all we get. But, mathematics of creation and astronomy and mathematics that's found in the Bible is fascinating. And that's the kind of mathematics we're talking about. let's look up this word count here. It is the Greek word 5585, se fidso. And it's from 5586. Now here's the definition. This is the method that we are to use to count the number of the beast. We are to use pebbles in enumeration, i.e. generally to compute. What do you mean using pebbles to enumerate? Isn't that, kind of not very sophisticated? Isn't that just what somebody, the old primitive man would do to figure things out? Not at all, my friends. Let's take a look. The early Greeks used pebbles arranged in patterns to learn arithmetic and geometry. And that's why this word is used in the Greek. I mean, that's how people learned it back then. You find out there are triangular numbers 1, 3, and they use sequences of pebbles to figure this out. Now these down here, these are a little different than how we're going to look at it today. Anyways, we'll pass on that for now. But I thought this was interesting when we're talking about whoever has understanding in Revelation 13, verse 18. This is from from the introduction to page 15, part of the intro, from A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe by Michael S., I believe it's pronounced Schneider. And I don't recommend his book for a spiritual understanding. But this book is very good at pointing out to you the basics of mathematics found in creation and found in geometry and astronomy and so on. So, excuse me, if you want to take this a little bit further, and especially if you're homeschooling, this is the foundation really that you can build off of for every subject, whether it's the Bible, whether it's math, whether it's music even, and it'll give it meaning. By that I mean starting with the basics of counting pebbles. I'm going to read this here. The studies that Plato specified as most effective in preparing the mind for understanding are the so-called mathematical subjects, consisting of number itself, music, geometry, and astronomy. These subjects, and what we're finding out as we go through, and we haven't really pointed it out a lot yet, but in my research, been finding out that the same numbers are found, the same number patterns are found throughout music, geometry, astronomy, and creation. And they have meaning. They have purpose. By the way, Plato was a Greek philosopher and mathematician, if you're wondering who this Plato character is. I don't often refer to philosophers and people like that. But, when God says whoever has understanding in calculation, these are the kinds of people he was talking about. A lot of Christians, early Christians, had been previous initiates in the mystery schools. By that I mean they were pagans before they became Christians, and some of them were pretty high up in paganism. And some of them learned some of these secrets. They learned how to use this sort of math. And I'm going to say this, having understanding in mathematical calculations, this kind of mathematical calculations, takes time and practice. It's not something that we can just pick up in one day, even 1 month or several months. Though we can learn a lot. It's something that takes some time. It's a skill set that needs to be developed. And it requires more than simply having just eyes to see and ears to hear. Though that's all part of it. So, again, it requires a mathematical understanding. So let's start this out then. Let's start making some calculations. Let's pretend that this circle here is a pebble. And we're going to start putting some pebbles together and see what happens. All right, so we got one circle in the middle. We're gonna just go around here in a circle, or around the perimeter here. So we got 3 pebbles, 4 pebbles, 5 pebbles, 6 pebbles. Altogether, we have 7, which forms an interesting shape here. 7 is the first hexagonal number. I think that's very interesting, and you're going to see this. I'll tell you what, by the end of this study, at the very end of the study, don't go away whatever you do. You're going to find out that this formation here, this simple hexagon, is connected with the prophecy of the 1260 days, as well as that of Christ's ministry, and also the time of the 2 witnesses, and so on. And it's an understanding that we remember when Daniel was given some of the numbers concerning the end days. He was told to go his way, and that this knowledge really wasn't for him, and that in the last days many would run to and fro, and knowledge would be increased. And that's what we're doing here. Are we going to totally put it all together by the end of this series? Well, I think we're going to put a lot of pieces together. Are we going to have more than Daniel had? I think probably so. And the clue is given to us again in Revelation 13, verse 18. It's found in the process of calculation. All right. So 7 is a hexagonal number. And I thought this was interesting here. I'm going to read this verse. Exodus 20, verse 8 through 10. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the 7th is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. Now, what we see here is we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These circles are all similar in that they go around this center circle, which separates the 7th circle as being different from the other 6. So you got displayed here the 6 working days and the 7th day, which is the Sabbath. So right away in the hexagon, you have the first hexagon, you have the Sabbath principle. So you got 6 working days plus 1 day, the Sabbath, equals a 7-day week. All right. So what does that tell us? Well, we can mark this down as this little fact down that the hexagon represents completeness. It represents completeness. And not only that, but this shape is directly linked to time and space. I'm going to say that again. The hexagon in geometry, or I could say it this way, the number 7 geometrically is directly linked to time and space, because the number 7 can be illustrated like this, or it can be pictured like this. All right. By that I mean pictured as a hexagon. I'm not going to go too much into it right now, but we know that pagans often use the hexagon for their purposes. And we've kind of gone over that quite a bit, so I'm not going to touch too much on that. Just always remember that Satan and paganism has stolen, copied, and perverted the things of God and used them for their own ends. But what we're doing here is simply using the method of counting pebbles to make calculations, to make observations even. All right, moving on. So there we have what we've been talking about is the 360-day lunisolar year. And during the days of Noah, the year consisted of 12 30-day months. And you can find that in Genesis chapter 7 through 8. All right. I think I had that slide a little too early, but that's okay. So if we add another layer of circles around these 7, I wonder what we get. Well, let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 circles. Well, what's interesting about this, remember, again, we're just putting pebbles together, making shapes. Very simple. But yet, as we find out, it gets to be profound. All right, so 12, we know there are 12 tribes of Israel. They were the 12 apostles. There were 12 gates to New Jerusalem. 12 signs of the Zodiac. 12 months in a year. 12 fruits on the tree of life. And so on. There's more than that, but anyways, so what we find out is that number 12 is associated with eternal life, or cycles of time in the eternity, over and over and over again. All right, so if we draw lines through the centers of our circles here, we have a cross that divides, even if you would, the 4 seasons. A natural breakup here. 4 quarters, 4 seasons. And if we draw a line through the middle of all of these outside circles, we end up with something kind of peculiar here. We end up with 12 divisions of the year. And here was the map we were going to go to, or diagram. This is actually a little bit different. So what we have there was the Zodiac year, with 30 degrees making up each portion of a 360-degree circle. And of course, throughout the year, the sun appears to, its apparent path goes through Pisces, Aries, Taurus, all the way around this way. And then we also have the same breakdown in the great year, which equals 25,920 years. We went over this in our last study, but there we have it. Larger scale of time. So, another thing that a hexagon can do is it can be transformed into a 3D image of a cube. I thought this was really interesting. If you just draw lines from these points, these outside circles, and intersect them at the middle, you have a cube. Now, what's interesting about that is many people believe that because the dimensions of New Jerusalem is said to be 4 square at its base, they believe that it is a cube. That it is a cube. Well, there's a little bit of a debate on that. I'm not sure which one I'm going to go with for sure right now. I've been leaning more towards the pyramid than the cube. And some say it'll depend on what your perspective is. But anyways, we will move on there. So if we bring the total number of the circles to 19, like we did here, I'm just going to read this from page 372 to 373 of the Computation of 666. And it reads, bringing the total number of circles to 19, the number corresponding in years to the first eclipse cycle, the nutation cycle, the revolution of the moon's node, and the metonic cycle, by the exclusion of fractions. The points of contact number in all, now check this out, 42. 42. So, not only when we bisect all of these outside circles in through the middle does it make a 360 degree circle broken up into 30 degrees each, which represents the regular zodiac year as well as the great year. But this number is also related to time because there are 19 pebbles, if you would, or circles used to make up this hexagon. So what this book here, the Computation of 666, is pointing out is that 19 is related to all these different cycles of time, eclipse cycles, nutation cycles, the metonic cycle, and so on. And if you did our series of studies on the so-called magic 666 magic square of the sun, you find out that the numbers 18 and 19 were singled out there as well. And if you did our study on the, I think it's the Saros cycles, we went over that Saros cycles are 18 and some fraction long for those cycles to take place. But anyways, so we're dealing with time. And it just so happens that, this is just geometry. Who would have ever thought you could just stack pebbles up and you can learn astronomy? Did you ever think you could do that? Well, God's Word says we can be able to calculate the number of the beast that way. And you know what? I had no idea when I began taking on this challenge of trying to figure out what God was talking about when he said calculate the number of the beast. For years I went with the simple understanding that most people do. As what most people I shouldn't say most people, many Christians or some Christians, the very few that actually pay attention to numbers in the Bible, do so simply and there are many books out there. There are books by Dr. Bullinger and others that they don't really get into the calculations of numbers. They merely point out the spiritual significance of numbers by observation. By that I mean, if you want to find out what the number 7 means, you go throughout the Bible and you see the number 7 is usually used in connection with spiritual completeness. 7 candlesticks, 7 stars, 7 churches, 7 trumpets, 7 vials, and so forth. It's a number that represents completeness. Well, you can do that with many different numbers. You can do that with 666 as well. In the Bible, on the surface, I should say, not under the surface, but on the surface, 666 is oftentimes used for man's rebellion against God. But again, we were told to calculate, to make calculations. So what there is throughout the entire Bible, there's gematria and so forth. Throughout the whole Bible, there is mathematics. And it's a little bit more than just observing the meaning of a number. Again, that's really important. That's part of the foundational knowledge. But anyways, there's points of contact in number in all are 42. Now 42 we know has to do with time as well. Because 42 months is the time that the beast is given to blaspheme God and our Lord Jesus Christ. In Revelation chapter 13, and 42 months is the same as 1,260 days. Now, I know there are some people who try to say that 40 months is different than days and so forth. Yes, currently under the solar system that we are dealing with now, there is a difference. But historically, maybe even all the way up to the time of Hezekiah, there was a 360-day perfect lunisolar year. And I hate to keep referring to past studies we've done, but we do have a study titled that, The Perfect 360-Day Year, or the prophetic 360-day year. And what's important is that all of the end times prophecies given in time are referring to that period of time, are referring to a 360-day year, not what we're dealing with now, a 365.242 or whatever it is for a solar year. That's why there's a lot of confusion as far as the time there. But anyways, so 42 points of contact. What are they talking about here? It's wherever these circles touch each other. So there's a point of contact. 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 And so on. There's 42 of them within this 19-circle hexagon. Again, all referring to time. Again, 42 is actually half of the final 7-year period, or of a 7-year period, if you would. All right, moving on. So far what we got, we have some spiritual meanings that we are able to glean from the hexagon. And we find out that the number 7 is the first hexagon, and it has to do with completeness, Sabbath, cycles of time. And then we moved up to the number 19. And we find out that there was the 12 circles went around it, symbolizes the Zodiac, the tribes of Israel, New Jerusalem, and so on. So what we have here, this hexagon represents eternity and cycles of time. And cycles of time. All right. So if we do another layer around here, now what do we get again? Well, last time we had 19 all together in here. If we add another layer around this hexagon, we have the number 18. Again, the number of years in a Saros eclipse cycle. Remember, Saros was connected to the number 666. Saros in itself, actually, in gematria, equals 666. Fascinating. So you might be, you could be confused right now. You're like, well, what do all these numbers mean? Hey, you know what we're doing is we're factoring all of this out, and we're building a foundation by which we're able to build off. Because when you keep doing this, you're going to start seeing patterns in creation, in astronomy, all over. And they're going to revolve around certain numbers. And then when the enemy uses some of these things, you're going to know what they're trying to do. Because you're going to know why God uses them. And you're going to know, and knowing that our enemy is mischievous, he's a thief, he's a robber, he likes to twist things, even just to irk Almighty God in the form of blasphemy. You see what? Satan doesn't just blaspheme with words. Did you know that? Mathematics is a language all in itself, this kind of mathematics that we're talking about. So what do you think Satan does? Well, he uses mathematics even to blaspheme God. By that I mean twisted configurations. For those ends. So there we have it. The number 18 again. All these things having to do with time. All right. Now if we scratch all those numbers out and we just add them all up, guess what we get? Now this is just mind-boggling. Again, if you've been with us since the beginning of this series, you're starting to see a lot of patterns with certain numbers. Well, right in the middle, we have the number 19. Again, that number having to do with cycles of time. And the number 37. There are 37 circles in all. What does 37 mean? What does it represent? Well, many things. But if you were to take the 36 constellations by which the sun makes its journey through the heavens there, through the 36 constellations, as it moves through the 12 signs of the Zodiac, you could put this out on a, if you were to extend the 36 constellations onto a line, you would see here that onto a line with points, you would see this in the yellow are the 36 constellations. But the sun would actually hit 36 points. There's always this what's interesting in biblical mathematics, creation math, there's always this principle of the addition of one. And that's something we haven't talked a lot about. But it's fascinating. So basically when you see the number 37, 37 or 36, most often it has to do with the heavens spread out, all of the heavens, because That's how the entire that's the entire heaven mapped out into these constellations. All right. This is that magic square of the sun that we were talking about. Again, they call it the magic square of the sun because the numbers do some, in their arrangements here, they do some pretty fantastic things. I like to just call it the numerical square of the sun. And you haven't seen the end of these numerical squares. You know what? There's one for each. There are 7 of them. And I do plan on getting to some interesting things about them. But let's just look at this. Let's just review this slide that we did before. We see the number 37 can be found by adding the opposites. You just add these together. Boom, 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 boom. They all equal 37. And that's simply by just arranging these numbers in a square. Again, who'd have ever thought you could be learning advanced astronomy that has to do with biblical time by simply counting pebbles or putting numbers in a square? Or learning about, this has even more to do with things that we haven't talked a lot about yet, but things such as magnetism, electricity, and so on. All right. So, let's see if I was there. There we go. Yep. That's the same one. All right. Move on to this slide. This is a slide we did in a prior study. The number 37 is not just a hexagonal number like we have here. It's actually even a star number as well. Many of you are familiar with this 6-pointed star. It's used by the synagogue of Satan today, but it was stolen by them. It was stolen by them, probably because this star, either Satan stole it a long time ago or it was given to him. He was made the full pattern. His name was Lucifer, the bright morning star. And this star may have even been his symbol in the first world age before his rebellion. But anyways, in and in itself, the 6-pointed star is not evil. It's connected with a number that has to do with the heavens. So this number, very interesting. Very interesting. I believe this is the first hexagram that you can make with pebbles. I believe you have to have 37. All right. More tidbits about the number 37 in Greek gematria. The word Jesus, 888, equals 37 times 28. So 37 is a factor of Jesus' name. All right. Christ in gematria is 1480, 1480. 37 is also a factor of that. All right. I don't have the page number here, I apologize, but from this book by Bonnie Gant, again, all of her books are excellent in learning biblical numerics, gematria, calculations, even to the Great Pyramid, to whatever. She was an expert in this field. But she points out here that this first verse in Genesis 1 has a numeric value of 2701, which is actually 37 times 73. And 73 is actually a mirror reverse. I think there's another name for that, but I'll just go with that. A mirror reverse of 37. You see what numbers do? They do some fascinating things. Anyways, so that number has to do with creation, the number 37. And we see the word wisdom has a value of 73. And if we were to reverse it, we'd have 37. The word logos has a gematria value of 373. 37 plus 73. You see how you can do that? 37, separate it, now you have 73. You have both of those numbers. Is that an accident? I don't think so. I think it's by perfect design. All right. So, how are we going to break this down? What do we have so far? Spiritual meanings of the hexagon. I probably should have titled this lecture, this study, the Counting Pebbles to make hexagons, or something like that, because that's really what we're focusing in on here today. But so we have completeness, Sabbath, cycles of time. The first hexagon, eternity and cycles of time for the number 19, the 19 circled hexagon. And the 37 hexagon has a meaning that has to do with creation and cycles of time. But notice they all have to do with cycles of time. Even now we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but you know what? Even in our bodies, each atom is like a mini solar system with circles or spheres going around each other. So it is fascinating when we're looking at this, because all these different numbers don't just apply to cycles of time in astronomy, but even among created things. When Christ said he is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the ending, that was a pretty profound statement. Anyways, there's something I want to show you about the hexagonal numbers. So we see we have 7, we have 19, we have 37. If we were to keep continuing this line out, we'd have a hexagon of 61, 91, 169, 217, all the way on down the line. But what's very interesting about this is there's a pattern that develops. You see the last numbers here: 7, 9, 7, 1, 1, 9, 7, 1, 1, 1, 7, 9, 7, 1, 1, 7, 9, okay, and so forth. Let me look at this pattern here. 7, 9, 7, 1, 1. 7, 9, 7, 1, 1. All right, we don't have a 7 here, but we have a 9, 7, 1, 1. 9, 7, 1, 1. So we have all these 9s and 7s and 1s that develop here into sort of a pattern. Thought that was interesting. Anyways, we'll move on to something that we are going to just touch on here today. This is one of the probably one of the most fascinating breakthroughs, probably, when we're getting into counting pebbles here, the process of factoring. I'm going to read this from page 396 of the Computation of 666. Again, this work, along with Bonnie Gaunt's books and other sources, I'll just say it this way: the Computation of 666 and the books by Bonnie Gaunt have been very helpful in my research for this series of studies, along with others like Dr. Bollinger's Witness of the Stars, his Numerics book. There are countless others. But this book, The Computation of 666, though it is complicated at times, if you work your way through it, it is amazing. The amount of knowledge that it contains. And if you haven't downloaded it yet and tried to read it, it was written in 1891, and it's been out of print. I don't even think there are any. I saw a copy available somewhere for $1,000, but you can get a free copy of it from our website. If you just go up to the tab, I think it's the podcast tab, underneath there will be, you pull that tab down and you'll see a free books tab. Click on that and you'll find it there. And anyways, I'm going to read this here. From page 396, if the reader will collect a few marbles, he will see how the number 2520 is the sum of the leading geometrical forms. 3 marbles placed together form the first triangle. Therefore, 3 is the representative number of the triangle. 4 marbles placed together form the first square. Therefore, 4 is the representative number of the square. 5 marbles placed together form the first pyramid. Therefore, 5 is the representative number of the pyramid. 7 marbles placed together form the first hexagon. Therefore, 7 is the representative number of the hexagon. 8 marbles placed together form the first cube. Therefore, 8 is the representative number of the cube. Now, this is something that, again, if you're homeschooling or not even, don't have to be homeschooling, but if you have kids, you can teach them these things with pennies and so forth. But if you want to get into the shapes like the cubes and the pyramids, what you can do is you can order. I just ordered a set off of Amazon. I think it came with 216 little balls, little magnet balls. And you can build all these different things. So you can teach them math and geometry. And then you can connect it to this stuff at a later time as well. But, and it's a good way for, if you really want to learn this stuff yourself, it's a good way for you to tinker around and understand kind of the perspective of the creator, even if you would. But anyways, it says, now, the least common multiple of 3, 4, 5, and 7, and 8, i.e. of the triangle, the square, the pyramid, the hexagon, and the cube, is 840, which, on the usual threefold projection, is 2520. The number of the 7 circles, 7 times 360 degrees, or grand hexagon. Do you see that there? You have the triangle, the square, the pyramid, and the hexagon, and the cube. These 5 shapes have a least common multiple when illustrated on a threefold projection equals the number 2520. Do you remember what 2520 was? Let's check this out. What they're saying there is each circle actually represents the number 360 because it's 360 degrees. So if you have 7 times 360s, you get the 2520 days, which are the prophetic years. 360 are the prophetic years given to us in Genesis, Daniel, and Revelation. Now, when we break this in half, we break this hexagon in half, and we have 1260 plus 1260, which total the 7 years of the Antichrist. Fascinating. Remember the 1260 days? Well, it can be illustrated by geometry or geometrically as a half a hexagon here, one that's split in half. But if we put it together, we have the 7 years of the Antichrist represented geometrically as the first hexagon. Think about that. Fascinating. But even more fascinating, we have the ministry of Christ and the two witnesses combined in this same shape. 7 times 60 equals 2520 days. But down here you have so you divide this in half, you have 1260 days or 3.5 years of the ministry of Christ. Remember that? Well, if you add the 1260 days of the two witnesses, you have 7 years together. I'll show you that here. We have the completed hexagon. The completed hexagon. So, what is going on here? Why are both Christ's ministry, with the addition of the ministry of the two witnesses, and Antichrist's ministry, why do they both form this hexagram or this hexagon? Well, it's another one of those things, I believe, where Satan has a copycat. Where Satan copies the things of God. Just like, again, the Holy Trinity is made up of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, in the book of Revelation 13, the unholy Trinity is made up of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. So this is this 2520 is kind of the grand number that factors in all of these numbers that we've been looking at. This is like the grand cycle of time. And we're going to get into the 77s even, the 490 years, and how that's illustrated in geometry. All these things are, going back, God says, hey, you want to know where a lot of wisdom is found? It's found by counting pebbles. Amazing. I don't have a slide up here for this, but many of you are familiar with the sign of the symbol of the Freemasons. It is the square and the compass. Well, they picked that for a reason. Because with the square and the compass, you can basically discover all the building blocks of creation, as well as the mathematical properties of creation, as well as astronomy, and so many other things. And that's why it's their so-called secret. Or that's their so-called symbol of all their secrets. Because, yeah, many of the secrets that have been guarded by these mystery schools are found in geometry, such as what we've looked at today. Anyways, hey, I hope you're enjoying this process of factoring these things out. Today, we just learned a little bit of the basics as far as how this is done. And I'm having a great time doing it. I hope you are as well, learning it with me. And I just ask that you continue to pray that God open our minds and share with us some of the deeper truths in His plan. Not just so we can, get big puffed up heads and say, oh, I know all this. I know how to count the number of the beast. I know how to factor all this out. But so that we can be better servants of His. So that we can understand more of what's in God's plan, more of what He's trying to do, more about Him in general, but also so that we can understand what the enemy is up to. Because when we see the enemy copying different things, like using the number 360 or using the number 7 or using a hexagon, we're going to begin to understand what those symbols mean. Instead of being scared and forfeiting them and saying, oh no, the hexagon, or oh no, the 6-pointed star, and be frightened by it as though it's just a devilish symbol. We can understand why they are trying to use it, and also what the real meaning was in the beginning. So that we can sift through things with knowledge, and that we don't let a little bit of knowledge, like many people do, get into their head, and they sort of become fanatical. It's so easy to do. There's so much misinformation out there, and so on. But hey, I better close this up. Do like what Christ said in Matthew chapter 4 when tempted of the devil. He told him that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word of God. I might even add, every number and equation that God has placed in the Bible. Everything has meaning. And it all unfolds naturally. And is surprisingly not confusing at all. Anyways, so do that. Consume it. Digest His Word every single day so that you can be a Christian overcomer. Christian Overcomers is brought to you by the tithes and offerings of our listeners. If you'd like to donate, you can do so by going to ChristianOvercomers.com. God bless you, and thank you for your support.